Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the Messengers in Our Home. Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Messengers in Our Home. Tonight we're going to talk about Chapter 36, Mother and Children, which is the continuation of the home worship or God at Home meeting that started last week. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hi, Francisca. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another chapter of the Messengers in Our Home.
So before we start, we would like to invite you, if you can, to close your eyes, taking a deep breath in and a long breath out, letting go of stresses of the day so that we can be fully present here right now. Dear Mother, Father God, Creator of the universe and of our yet small hearts, yet again we are united in your name all over the world to learn more about your laws, how to apply them in our daily life. And we ask you to help us to open our hearts and minds so that the teachings of tonight's lesson resonate in the depths of our soul and gives us the motivation to really change for the better. Step by step, day by day, improving ourselves. And especially to be able to make that link between theory and practice. Because that's what it's all about. And with your permission, we would now like to start our meeting. And so be it. So here we are, the reading of Chapter 36. Enjoy.
Chapter 36, Mother and Children. During the Gospel commentary, I had made some interesting observations. As was the case with Ismalia when we were listening to her sublime melody, Fabio's interpretation of the Gospel was filled with spiritual wonders that transcended Donna Isabel's receptive ability. She seemed to retain only part of the teaching. Hence, the children received the lesson according to their mother's mediumistic abilities, whereas the full teaching was transmitted to the rest of us with all of its wonderful content of beauty. Consider it as ever, Aniceto explained. Don't marvel at this phenomenon. Each one receives spiritual light according to his capacity. There are several fellow spirits here who have a harder time registering Fabio's commentary than do the children themselves. They are still greatly limited. There was great respect in all the discarnates present. Fabio Aletto sat on a higher plane, while Isidoro took his place next to his wife in the kindly impulse of a father who lovingly approaches his beloved children to converse lovingly with them. At that instant, little Marietta, who looked to be about 7, took advantage of this moment when no one was speaking in order to ask her mother in a moving tone,
Mama, if Jesus is so good, then why do we eat only once a day here in our home? In Donna Fausta's home they have 2 meals, lunch and dinner. Nellie told me that when Daddy was still around, it was also like that. But now, why is it like that?
The widow smiled a bit sadly and said,
Well, Marietta, you seem to be quite concerned about this matter. We must not subject all our thoughts to the needs of the stomach. How long have we been eating our daily meal now and enjoying good health? How much benefit are we reaping from this frugality with food?
Joaninha broke in.
Mama's right. I've seen a lot of people get sick by abusing food. Besides that,
added Isabel, comforted,
you can be sure that Jesus blesses the bread and water of all those who are truly thankful for the divine gifts. It is true that Isidoro left before us, but we've never lacked what we need. We have our little house, our spiritual togetherness, and our good friends. And you can be sure that Daddy is still working for us.
All of us were touched by this, and Isidoro wiped his tear-dampened eyes. Noemi, the youngest little one, said in an innocent voice,
That's right, it's true. I saw Daddy helping to hold the cake that Donna Cora brought us on Sunday.
So did I, Noemi,
said Isabel, her eyes lively and shining.
Daddy is still helping us.
And turning to the others, she added,
When we know how to love and wait, my children, we are not separate from our dear ones who've died in the physical realm. We can be sure of Jesus' watch care.
Marietta, seeming to be perfectly calm now, agreed.
When you talk, Mama, I feel that it's all true. How good Jesus is. But what if he didn't have you anymore? I've seen abandoned beggar children. Maybe they have nothing at all to eat. Maybe they don't have friends like ours. Ah, how grateful to heaven we should be.
The widow was visibly comforted at hearing these words and exclaimed with deep emotion,
Very good, my child. We should never complain but always praise. And perhaps you wouldn't be able to grasp that if our table had plenty.
I observed, however, that the 12-year-old boy was not sharing in that torrent of blessings. There was a constant exchange of luminous vibrations between Donna Isabel and her 4 daughters, as if they were at one in the same ideal and united in a single position. But the boy remained spiritually distant, closed within a circle of darkness. From time to time, he smiled ironically, insensitive to the significance of the moment. Availing himself of the lengthy pause, he asked his mother less respectfully, Mama, what do you think poverty is? Donna Isabel answered very serenely,
My son, I think that poverty is one of the best opportunities available for spiritual growth. I'm convinced that wealthy people have a great task to fulfill. But I believe that, besides their mission in the world, poor people are freer and happier. In poverty, it's easier to find sincere friendship, the vision of God's assistance, the treasures of nature, and the wealth of simple and pure joys. Of course, I'm not referring to idle and ungrateful people. I'm referring to the poor who work and keep the faith. It's very difficult for people with great financial resources to know how to discern between affection and petty self-interest. Believing they can do anything by themselves, they don't always understand divine watch care. Because they have given in to the addiction of comfort, they have distanced themselves more from the blessings of nature. And because they always seek to satisfy their own whims, they restrict their capacity to be happy and to confide in the world.
Despite the profound beauty of her opinion, the boy remained indifferent and responded somewhat upset. Unfortunately, I can't agree with you. Even kindergarten children believe otherwise. Isabel changed her expression and assumed an attitude of one who instructs with a sense of responsibility.
We're not in kindergarten here, my son. We are in the garden of our home, and it behooves us to know that, even though the blossoms are always beautiful, life cannot move forward without the blessing of the fruit. Wherever we go in the world, we will receive news involving venomous lies. We must watch our hearts, Joãozinho, and appreciate the blessings that Jesus sends us.
The boy, however, revealing enormous inner rebellion, retorted, "Don't you think it would be more reasonable for us to rent this room so we could have some extra money? Yesterday, I was talking with Mr. Maciel on my way home from school. He would pay us well so he could have a furniture storage place here." Dona Isabel, firm but not angry, was direct with her answer.
You should know, my son, that as long as you respect the memory of your father, this room will be devoted solely to our gospel activities. I've already told you the story of our home worship service, and I don't want you to be blind regarding the blessings of Christ. Later on, Joãozinho, when you set out on your own in the material struggle, you can build houses to rent if you so desire. But for now, you shall have to regard this room as something sacred to your mother.
"And if I insist?" asked the arrogant boy grumpily. The widow, very calm, explained firmly.
If you insist, you will be punished. I'm not a mother to create dangerous illusions in the hearts of the children God has entrusted to me. Since I love you all very much, I must point you in the right direction.
The boy wanted to retort, but it seemed to me that the light issuing from Isabel's chest area confused his rebellious spirit, and I saw him become still against his wishes, sullen and angry. I deeply admired that kind woman who addressed her oldest daughter as a friend, her younger ones as a mother, and her proud son as a sensible and conscientious instructor. Aniceto also seemed pleased and said to us, "The gospel brings balance to the soul." Little Nellie was frightened and asked humbly,
Mama, don't let Joãozinho rent the room.
The widow smiled, caressed her daughter's little face, and affirmed,
Joãozinho won't do that. He knows that his mama means what she says. Let's not talk about this anymore, Nelly.
And, looking at the clock, she said to her eldest,
Joaninha, pray giving thanks in our name. Our time is up.
The young girl, with a noble and loving expression, thanked the Lord, touching our hearts. And tonight we're talking about chapter 36, Mother and Children. And as we already know, we've been talking, last week we talked about the beginning of this gospel in the home, or God at home, or as they call it here, the home worship service. And we finished last week's commentary, we finished last week's chapter with Dona Isabel saying to all the participants so that they could talk for a little while. Let's remember that this is a moment when we present or try to study some of the moment that I'm talking about here is the God at home, right? The home worship service that we should have, as we said last week, at least once a week for about half an hour, or depending on how many people we have there, is an agreement between all of them, but more or less about 30 minutes it would be okay. Is it for us to gather together, read a passage from the Bible, from a good book, from the Gospel According to Spiritism, from a book of stories for children, if we have children present, so that we can discuss some of the the concepts of doing good to others, right? Independently of what kind of religion we follow. Naturally, we are spiritists here preparing this program, so we're going to talk more about the spiritist books. But there are so many good books with stories for children, with good reflections on day-to-day struggles, on very good passages, let's say, of Buddhism, for example, or Taoism, or whatever religion you follow. So it is very interesting for us to get together to talk a little in family, right, within our house, within our home, about these passages for us to reflect upon and hopefully practice more and more of them in our day-to-day lives. But the perspective that Spiritism gives to this meeting is not just a purely material perspective, right? Because we are seeing that the spirits are on the other side, right, looking and present at that meeting and guiding the ones that are present there. We just saw last week that Fabio Aletto spoke or inspired Donna Isabel, right? He inspired Donna Isabel to say the words on the topics that they chose. And that's more or less how we start today's chapter, because Andre says that during that gospel commentary, he made some interesting observations, right? It's that Fabio's interpretation of the gospel was filled with spiritual wonders that transcended Donna Isabel's receptive ability, meaning that Fabio is a higher order spirit, right, that can interpret, that can notice, that can perceive more and deeply the concepts of the gospel or of the passage that they were reading at that specific night. And so to make a comparison, he will later on talk a little bit, or not Andre, right? We will see Aniceto making a comment on this. But what Andre says at this very moment, he says that she, Donna Isabel, seemed to retain only part of the teaching. Why is that so, right? We will understand more if you already read the chapter and you heard the reading of the chapter by me and Francisca already. But we already know why that happens. But we will make a few more comments on this topic while we go on with the chapter. But before that, Andre makes a comparison with another passage that we already spoke about in this book on chapter 32, when we talked a little bit about Ismalia's singing and what she sang on chapter 32, the Sublime Melody, right? That she was not actively and actually saying something. It was as if her feelings were being expressed, and all the present people, all the present spirits, were feeling those sentiments that she was expressing through a way which Andre couldn't describe, and then he was to some degree listening to the words, but that he could not explain exactly what was happening then. So here he's making a comparison as such. He's saying that Fabio Aletto would go so deep into the concepts that to some people they would only perceive, they would only be able to notice some of the meanings, while others would notice much, much more. And that's why Andre goes on and says that the children received the lesson according to their mother's mediumistic abilities, and naturally, more than just what her mother or their mother were saying, they were also understanding maybe a little less than what she was saying. Why? Because they are only able to perceive to the amount of knowledge that they can grasp at that specific moment. And some of the spirits who were discarnated, they could notice more. Probably Aniceto, let's say, would notice more than what Andre was able to notice. Why? Because he has more experience. He is a spirit with more hours of work, probably a spirit who is more spiritually advanced, has more studies on that topic, and so on and so forth. So that's more or less how it is in our day-to-day lives, isn't it? Like if I work cleaning houses, right? When I enter a house, because I work cleaning houses every day, I will notice things that other people that don't work on that field will not notice. Why? It's because I'm better? No, it's just because I'm better at that since I've been working on that. The same way we can go to any kind of topic, right? Let's say I'm a biologist, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer. I will be able to deal with those problems in advocacy, right? In biology, in medicine, differently than other people because I am working and studying that. The same way morally, right? The deeper I go into morality, the best that I can be and the best that I can practice and study, I will be able to understand more. I will be able to go further down or further up in understanding deep concepts of being good and of the law of God, right? And Aniceto looks at us and looks at Andre and all the present, say, hey, don't marvel at this phenomenon. And that's where he explains, right, what I was just talking about. Each one receives spiritual light according to his capacity. It is natural, right? Let's say I have a camera, right, and I have the lenses. Depending on the type of lens that I have, I will be able to take photos from different perspectives. Let's say if I have a lens that has a very deep zoom, I can zoom and get the picture of a person or of a situation or of something that's very, very far away and see more detail than another lens that I have that cannot perceive that detail but can have a wider view of things. So it is according to the lens capacity, right? So it's what Aniceto is telling us here. Each one receives spiritual light according to his capacity. And what Aniceto tells us here is that unfortunately there are spirits here that have a harder time registering the commentary that Fabio was making than some children have, because they are still very limited. They still didn't start to study. They didn't have the education that, let's say, Donna Isabel is giving to her children, right? So it's not about age. It's not about gender. It's not about time, right? When I was created, when I first started my life. No, it's about how much have I devoted my time to learning that specific kind of teaching. And that's what we are making an effort here at Kardec Radio to help ourselves and to help our neighbors and to help the world, is to expose these commentaries, expose these ideas to a wider audience so that we can all, right, start to see how wonderful and how better life is once we really understand that we are not here just for this very brief moment in time, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, and then that's it. No, we are here planting our own future, right? Planting the future of our own people, right? Of our own children, of our own fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, and so on and so forth. So it's what we need to understand, and that's what Donna Isabel is trying to teach and is teaching, or was teaching, her children when she was incarnated, and what we are seeing right now as Andre is describing to us. And then Andre goes on to describe what every or some of the spirits are doing at the time. So he says that Fabio Aleto is in a more higher plane, maybe looking in taking care of that situation, maybe supervising the whole meeting, right? Taking care of what the spirits are doing, of how spirits are being treated around that very magnificent harmony that's being predisposed there by the gospel at home, by the God at home. And while Fabio is there taking care of this, Isidoro goes next to his wife, right? It's a home worship service, right? So he is there with his family, together with them. So he encircles his wife as if in an embrace, so that he can embrace all his children through his wife. And then at that specific moment, Marieta, this is about 7, as Andrea describes, then she decides to ask a question because there's nobody speaking at that specific moment. So she asks, Mama, if Jesus is so good, then why do we eat only once a day here in our home, right? And then she compares themselves to another family, right? And she mentions the other family's mother's name, Dona Fausta. They have 2 meals, lunch and dinner, and she refers to Nellie, which is one of her sisters, saying that when they were younger, they would have more meals. When Daddy Isidoro, right, was there, they would have 2 meals. And why is it like this? The widow smiled a little bit sadly, naturally, but then she explains very calmly and in a very sweet way. She says, well, you seem to be concerned about this, Marieta, but we have to think above and beyond what our stomach dictates us. Why is that? And then she says, we have been eating our daily meal, and we are in a good health, aren't we? How much benefit are we reaping from this frugality with food, from not eating too much, right? This is a very, very good question, right? Because these days, and I'm not saying that we should not be eating once or twice or 3 times or 4 times a day. Actually, these days, right, if we go talk to doctors, they say that our body has been designed so that we can eat to be healthy, small portions, more or less every 3 hours, right? So this is not what we are saying. We're not saying the opposite, that we should only eat once a day. No, we should always follow what we see and we learn with science, with good science, right? But what the question that Dona Isabel is raising here goes deeper than this, right? What she is asking us to think about here, although on the surface she's talking about food, which is important, but she is not only talking about food. We're talking about the frugality, of having what we need to have, but on the certain and on the right amount, not to have more, and we abuse the possibilities that we have, and not to have way too less, to which we can be physically damaged, because it is important that we take care of our bodies. So her question, although she's answering her 7-year-old daughter about food and about complaining, or not complaining per se, but thinking about why do they eat so much less than other people, Dona Isabel is asking back, right? Do you know how much we are healthy and how much we are safer by eating the right amount, even though sometimes it may be or may seem less than what we actually need? That's what this frugality she is referring to here. To which one of her older daughters answer, Joaninha says, Mama's right. I've seen a lot of people get sick by abusing food. So this is the other very important word here. It's not the right amount, it's abusing, right? And how much we see these days, right, of people, of ourselves included, right, abusing foods, right? And not only in terms of quantity, but in terms of eating, having unhealthy habits, right, of eating out of time, or of eating much, much more than what's actually needed, and so on and so forth. And this is a teaching for all of us, right? And once again, it's not only about food, but let's say about technology, for example, about taking too much medicines for when we are sick, or not taking them when we need them. And it's about the abuse, right? Either going to one side of the scale or to the other side of the scale. So being frugal, being eating or having or consuming actually what is needed, what is really, really necessary. And sometimes it is interesting, and I've seen some people talking about this, is not even to have what is completely necessary, but if we can have just a little bit less of what is really necessary, so that we can really prepare ourselves, right, for the day when we don't have. So it's not to have too much or not to have way too little of what we need, but have exactly or almost exactly the right amount of what we need. And naturally, this is not something that's fixed. And what do I mean by that? Let's say I am a 6 foot tall person. I'm not, but I'm just saying I will need more food than a person that's, let's say, 4.5 foot tall, right? Than a child. Why? Because my body needs more energy. So it's not the amount in itself or the physicality of the amount, but the right amount for each one of us, which is different, right? A child eats much less than a full-grown adult, right? Which, let's say, an older person will have less energetic needs than a regular adult, like me having or being a 40-year-old or a 30-year-old. It's a different amount of energy that we need. So it's not a fixed amount, but we're talking about the amount that is right, that is fitting for that specific person. The same way with different things. Let's say for me now, I have the need to have a computer so that I can record this that I'm doing right now, right? But maybe there's another person at this moment that don't need a computer to listen to this. The person has a cell phone, and the cell phone is what the person needs to do everything that they need throughout their day. They don't need to sit at a desk and have a computer to record anything or to type anything. It's a different type of life. So is a computer completely necessary in this case? And for that person, no. But for me at this very moment is. And so on. We could find so many other examples of what is frugality and what somebody needs. So here's a discussion about what is necessary and what is superfluous. And that's what the discussion here. We could go on and on talking about what is necessary and what is superfluous. And we would discover that for different people need different things, right? And that's why Joanina breaks in and says what she says, that we already make a comment. Well, we've seen so many people get sick because they abused food, to which Isabel adds, right, that other than this that we are just discussing now, Isabel says, right, you can be sure that Jesus blesses the bread and water of all those who are truly thankful for the divine gifts. Meaning, what we have, if we are really thankful for what we have, we are being blessed at all times throughout the messengers that Jesus sends us. And that's what's happening right now, right, at Isabel's house. They are having this meeting, and the house, her house, right, her home, their home, is being used because of that amount of blessing, of that amount of love, that amount of thankfulness that they have for their lives, is being used as a station, as a workshop for workers of Nosso Lar, from where they can treat people, from where they can go and rest so that they can go and do their tasks, right? To which Isabel goes on and says, well, it is true that when your dad, when Isidoro was here, we never lacked what we needed, right? But we are still here, and you can be sure that Daddy is still working for us, right? Because we have our little house, we have our togetherness here, a spiritual togetherness, and we have a few good friends that can help us, that are helping us. So there are certainly things that could be different naturally. Well, if we are seeing that this family is can only have one meal a day, right? Can you imagine how that house works, right? Can we imagine ourselves having only one meal a day, right? Or being able only to have one meal a day? And have we ever thought that there are families in the world today that still survive on only one meal a day? And there are families today that if they add up all the food that they ate throughout the week, we would see that that amount of food is more or less what sometimes we eat in 1 day or 2 days. So it is a very dire situation. So I'm not saying that we should strive to be like they are, but what we are trying to see here is that how much do we, with what we have these days, how much do we need to be thankful for what we have, right? And then Noemi, one of the youngest little ones, says, "It is true, that's right, Daddy is here. I saw Daddy helping to hold the cake that Donna Cora brought us on Sunday." And then Donna Isabel looks at her and says, "I saw her too. Daddy is still helping us." And to what she goes on and says, "When we know how to love and wait, my children, we are not separated from our dear ones who've died in the physical realm. We can be sure of Jesus' watch care." So we are being helped at all times. And if we want to be helped, if we are thankful, we will be even more helped at all times. Because it is as if we are opening the doors of help, right? So we are doing the right amount. We are being thankful for what we have. We are not waiting to be helped. No, we are working together with them, helping ourselves, and by helping ourselves, the help from our good spirits is able to enter our lives and is able to help us be more perseverant, be more hopeful, be stronger, and go further and open the doors so that they can send help our way, show us some ways, help us make good choices so that paths open and people can come into our lives and help us help ourselves and help them. So it's a compounded work. I do my part, they do their part, and then our parts go together. Then I do my second part, their second part comes. It's the work goes further, and then we go on and go on and go on, and that's how it goes. That's how prayer works. That's how our work in the physical life, being thankful, being truly thankful, as she says, as she points to us, is. So that's that's what we need to do so that we can be helped. Those who help themselves are those who receive more and more help than those who are just lazy and waiting and expecting others to come and help them. And then we see what Marietta says, right? Marietta was the one who started the conversation, worried about how much food they have or they don't have. And then she says, "Yes, Mom, you're right, and I feel that's true because I've seen some people that don't have friends, that don't have parents, and they don't have anything. And we have our friends, right? We have something to eat. Oh, how grateful to heaven we should be, right?" To which is also interesting, right? We can if we keep comparing ourselves to the ones who have more than what we have, we will always be unsatisfied, right? Because we are wishing to have what they have, right? And sometimes this can become envy. And when it becomes envy, then it is reaching us in a part of ourselves that we should try to change, right? It is good for us to know if we are envious of somebody, right? So that we can look at ourselves and say, hey, I need not to be envious of the other person, but it is not wrong to see something that is good, that can work for me, that can be useful in my life, and strive to get that. That's not wrong. So this is not envy. But on the other hand, if we look to other people who have less than what we have, we will learn to be thankful and maybe to work more, either to help those who have less than what we do, to be satisfied with what we have, to be thankful with what we have, but to have the right amount of drive to get better, to improve not only spiritually but also materially. However, since the world already gives to us all the incentive for us to progress materially, and usually we don't receive the same amount of encouragement to progress spiritually, when we talk about Spiritism, we are not talking about progressing materially. That's not the main focus. We talk about, right? We say something from time to time, but it is very important for us to have the same drive, at least the same drive, I should say it better, to improve spiritually and morally, that the world inspire us to have a drive to improve materially. Right? So that's that balance that we are looking for here. And that's what Marietta gets to the conclusion of, right? How grateful we should be for having what we already have, because so many people in the world have way less than what we have, right? So thankfulness would really come from looking at not of what we don't have, but looking at what we already have that so many other people don't have. Naturally, not everybody agrees with this, and we see this point of view, or the other point of view, right here in the same chapter, because André describes Joãozinho, which is the son, right, which is Dona Isabel's son and Isidoro's son, and he is the only one that really don't share, that's not sharing at that specific moment those blessings, right, the blessings of those teachings, of thinking on and thinking about what they are discussing there. And he says that the boy remained spiritually distant, closed within a circle of darkness, that he smiled ironically, and it was he was not once again sharing that blissful moment of understanding, right, of growing spiritually. And then he goes and waits for a moment, waits for a chance, and asks, "Mama, what do you think poverty is?" And Dona Isabel looks at him and answers, "Well, I think it is one of the best opportunities available for spiritual growth." She says, "Well, I'm convinced that wealthy people have a great task to fulfill, but I believe that besides their mission in the world, poor people are freer and happier," right? She's saying, to be wealthy, it is important, and a person that is wealthy, that is rich, or the people who are wealthy, right? They have their tasks, right? Money to be used to help the world become a better place, right? But in terms of individuality, what she thinks, that's what Dona Isabel thinks. She thinks that poor people are freer and happier. In poverty, she goes on, it's easier to find sincere friendship. Why? Well, if you have nothing material to offer to another person, you can be sure, or it's easier to be sure, or to be certain, that the other person is not with you because she is getting something physical from you, right? Material from you. That's why we have so many problems and we see so many difficulties in rich people when we see that they have all those mansions, How can they be sure that their friends are really their friends, or as if they are not there together because they can be seen, or they can receive gifts, or they can. So how can they, right, be certain of that? So that's one of the thoughts of Dona Isabel here. And she goes on and says, well, when we are poor, right, the visions of God assistance, the treasure of nature, and the wealth of simple and pure joys are easier to find. Why? Because I don't have anything. So I will be wishful, and I will be satisfied, and I will be thankful for everything that I receive. Right? I can see how nature, how God is giving me something, right? And I'm not trusting myself only to be the giver, right? I need to understand that I am not self-sufficient. And being poor, in this sense, helps me to see this, to see that I am not self-sufficient. Naturally, and then she says, of course, that I'm not referring to idle and ungrateful people. So, once again, this is not about poverty or about being rich. It's about how we, as individuals, see and use that opportunity to become a better person, right? Because we can see that there are lots of rich people that are humble, that are good people, that are not self-sufficient, that understand that something can happen to them, so they prepare themselves, they prepare their children for the world. And there are poor people who do the opposite, right? They are very proud, that don't accept help from other people, and so on and so forth. So it's not about the poverty in itself, or about the richness, right, in itself, but about how we relate to that, right? If we are idle and ungrateful, it doesn't matter if I'm rich or if I'm poor, right? But what she's saying is that she believes that being poor allows us to see this with more clarity, or gives us a better chance of seeing this with more clarity. If we are going to see it, it's up to us, right? And she says that I'm referring to the poor who work and keep the faith, right? Of understand that I need to work. If I'm poor, I need to work, right? And I need to keep the faith that things will be solved, that we will find a way, that there's more to life than just this physical and material life. So she says that it's very difficult for people with great financial resources to know how to discern between affection and petty self-interest, right? How do I know that a person loves me if I am very, very rich, right? So that's why we see some movies, for example, right, in which very, very rich people or people with positions of power, they decide to get in a costume, for example, right, or go live a different type of life so that they can meet regular people and that they can see if people like him or like her for what they really are instead of for what they have. And that's the concept here. And one of the worst things, and that's what we were just talking about, that's what she says here, believing that they can do anything by themselves, they don't always understand divine watch care. That's that idea of being, of having total and full control of their lives. I'm self-sufficient. I don't need anybody else. I don't need God. I don't need this supreme power that guides my life. I can do it. I can do whatever I want to do and whatever I need to do because I'm self-sufficient, right? And that's what she is discussing here. So that's her definition of what what poverty really is a great and one of the best opportunities available for spiritual growth. Naturally, we can take any opportunity, being poor, being rich, being not poor, not rich, being medium class, having a little bit more sometimes, having a little bit less sometimes, to use those opportunities to grow. Depends on us, depends on what and how we see and what we do with our own lives. If we are poor and we only seek to destroy other people, to have what other people have, it's not going to be a good opportunity for us. Well, the opportunity was there. It would be good if we wanted to take it, but then we can misread it, transform it in an experience of loss instead of an experience of growth. But once again, if we don't have, right, we are more able to see that we need help to get to what we need to live and to survive. And if we understand this deep within ourselves, we will understand to be thankful to God and to see that everybody, independently of how much they have, of what they do with their lives, we are all brothers and sisters. We are all creatures, children of our Creator. However, after she explains this, the boy remains indifferent and responds upset. Well, and that's what we were saying, right? Not everybody agrees with what we were discussing in the beginning. And that's where we get Joãozinho disagreeing, right? And he says, well, I can't agree with you. Even kindergarten children believe otherwise. And what is he talking about, right? Kindergarten children, right? He is probably referring to that idea that a kindergartner always wants more, right? He sees what the other one has and he wants that from the other one, right? Now Dona Isabel looks at him and understands what's going on, right? So she changes her expression, and then now she assumes a different attitude, right? Now she is more direct, and she will go straight to the point so that she can solve the issue right there and point him in the right direction. And she starts by saying, we are not in kindergarten here, my son. This is serious, right? It's not that being in kindergarten is not serious. It is serious for those children, right? But who are the ones who take care of those kids? Are adults, right? Who know that they are going into dangerous territory, right? That's why it's all prepared, right? Let's see. We have power outlets. They are all covered. We don't have things that can cut. We have all the toys, right? Everything that's in kindergarten is prepared for them. Why can't we have a knife there? Well, isn't it obvious? It's more or less what we are discussing here, right? We are not in kindergarten, right? And she is already saying we are not in kindergarten here anymore. See, even if we were, it would all be prepared, but we are not in kindergarten. So I'm gonna tell you straight to you, right? I'm not going to cover everything so that you don't get hurt. So no, now we are now dealing with you, and she's more or less, I would say 12, 13, I don't remember. It says somewhere in the book how old he is, but he's in that age where he can go to the kitchen, right, and get a knife, right, to cut a bread, right, a loaf of bread to use to cut his, I don't know, his meat, to use to whatever he needs a knife for. We will always be telling our children, right? Be careful. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. But we are not going to take the knife from them, right? They will need to learn how to use it, correct? So this is what she's doing here. We're not in kindergarten, so you can have, right? You can have the knife, but we need to be careful. And that's what she says a little bit further down this paragraph. We will receive news involving venomous lies. Be careful knives are for cutting, not for harming. This is what she's telling. People can give you a knife and say, hey, with this knife, you can do this, 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 or you can do that, that, that. It's up to us to understand, to see how we can use that knife for, or a pair of scissors, right? Or even a pencil, right? We can use a pencil to write beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things. Just like, let's say, this book that we are reading, that when it was received, it was received with an actual pencil, right? It was not a pen, it was a pencil. It was written down on a piece of paper, and then it was typed in. And this is all for us to grow spiritually, morally. But we can also use the same pencil to write a letter to destroy one person's lives, right? So, and also we can use a pencil to physically harm somebody, or sometimes to remove a piece of something that's stuck from a place physically with a pencil. So it's up to us how we use the pencil, how we use the information, how we use the news that we get, right? We need to work. That's what she's saying. We need to work. I'm not saying that we should be poor forever. What I'm saying is that poverty, if we are in poverty at that specific moment, we need to be thankful for being in poverty and work as much and as well as we can to improve ourselves spiritually, materially as well. We need to watch our hearts, Joãozinho, and appreciate the blessings that Jesus sends us. We need to watch our hearts. We need to understand. We need to make an effort to see the world, to see things differently. Naturally, Joãozinho doesn't agree again, and he says rebelliously, do you think it would be more reasonable for us to rent this room so we could have some extra money? I was talking to Mr. Maciel on my way home from school. He would pay us well so we could have a furniture storage place here. See, is there anything wrong with that question, right? Is there anything weird with that question? No, he is thinking about improving, right? So a person could say, well, he is not wrong. And I will say, if we only see this up to this point here, up to his question, I would say that he is not wrong. However, what is he looking at? He is looking at this picture. He is looking at this situation only from the material point of view. And looking at it only from the material point of view, we would say that if they are going through a hard time, if they don't have any everything that they need to have a better material life, he is completely correct, right? He is thinking about improving their material life, right? Well, we have this room here. Why don't we rent this room so we get the money from the rent, and then we can improve our own lives, right? And he even talked to somebody, Mr. Maciel, right? And I was looking of what is the name Maciel, right? And the name Maciel is a person who plants apples, right? This is a Latin name, and the name Maciel, if you know the word in Portuguese for apple, which is maçã, will even have a similar sound, right? Maciel, maçã. So it is a person who plants, right, apples, so that they can, the name, right? It can get something from an apple tree, right? So he is like an entrepreneur, and he could use that room to storage, to use it as a storage place for some of his furniture. So Joãozinho is actually thinking of something material, right, to help the family. So it is not wrong to think on this way. However, what is the whole situation, right? What is the full situation? Because we think that the material life is the full situation, right? Is everything and the only thing that matters. And what Dona Isabel and what we are trying to understand more and more with Spiritism is that material life is, if as much as 50% of our lives, but we give it like a 95% importance over our whole self, right? So everything is material. And that's what Joãozinho is thinking about. Is he wrong to think about improving his life, material life? I would say no, he is not wrong. However, he has not seen the other side. He has not seen, and what about the spiritual life, right? When should we then take care and think about this? When should we do that? Isn't it at all times in our lives? Why should we only start thinking about our spiritual life when we are 80? And what if I don't ever get to 80 or 60 or 50, right? We have to weigh on both sides of our lives, our material life and our spiritual life at all times. And that's where Dona Isabel comes and says firmly, but not angry,
"You should know, my son, that as long as you respect the memory of your father, this room will be devoted solely to our gospel activities. I've already told you the story of our home worship service, and I don't want you to be blind regarding the blessings of Christ. Later on, Joãozinho, when you set out on your own in the material struggle, you can build houses to rent if you so desire. But for now, you shall have to regard this room as something sacred to your mother."
Something sacred to his mother. Why is she saying this? Why is she being so firm? Why she's being so straightforward to this point? Because if he, Joãozinho, cannot see that this is a blessing of Christ, he needs to look at somebody that he respects and see that it's her wish. If he could understand, she would not have said that. She would have said, because this is what Christ wants us to do. This is our mission. This is what we need to do. Since he doesn't understand this, since he cannot be thankful for what they have, since he cannot see that it is only because of what they're doing spiritually that they are having the blessing of having a harmonious family, she needs to be very, very strict with him. This room is sacred to your mother. That's what he says, right? And then he goes back to her and says, and if I insist, and then she doesn't lose it, we would probably lose it, right? But she doesn't lose it. She says, if you insist, you will be punished. It will have consequences, right? If you keep insisting, if you keep pushing this will have consequences, because I am not a person to create dangerous illusions in the hearts of the children God has entrusted to me. I have responsibility of being a mother to you. I need to point you at the right direction. So don't insist, because at this moment, since you still didn't understand, this is how it is. One day, when you grow up and you have your own right to decide what you need to decide, you will decide what you need to decide. This will be your life. However, I hope that you understand what I'm telling you right now, so that later on in life you can have and you can make better choices for your life, for yourself, and more importantly, for the ones to whom you will be responsible. You will be a father one day. You will need to be responsible one day. You will need to make choices. And hopefully, with what I am teaching you right now, Joãozinho, you will be able to choose better for your life and for the lives of those who will be under your umbrella, your sons, your daughters, your wife, and everybody that will need you one day. After saying this, André says, the boy wanted to say something, but it seemed to him, to André, that the light that was going out of Isabel's chest area, it's an image, right, to show us how much power that talk, right, that the love that came from Isabel had over Joãozinho, and that energy that came from his mother surrounded him and confused his rebellious spirit. So André sees him become still against what he wanted to do. He was very, very angry. And André says that he deeply admired that kind woman who treated her children in different ways, depending on how her children were, right? So he addressed her oldest daughter as a friend. She needs a mother, but now she is on that moment where it is much more of a friend that the daughter needs, instead of a mother saying and telling everything that she needs to do, right? It's more of a conversational tone. But then she relates to her younger ones as a mother, right? As a person who is always there, taking good care, embracing and hugging and treating as a real mother in this sense of what we see a mother, right? And her proud son as a sensible and conscientious instructor, not as a mother to which we see, well, we take care and we are always, right, very, very kind and all that stuff. But to her son, she would be more like an instructor. Well, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. I need to be taking very, very much attention to what you're doing and instructing. Instead of a mother who is always caring and always asking and always, it's a different way of treating different spirits, right? If we have 5 children, they will be like our fingers, right? Fingers in our hands. One is smaller, one serves for the ring, one is the longest one is chubbier, one is the one that points. They're all different, but they all belong to the same hand. It's more or less the same way. We treat each one the way we find it better to treat, appropriate to treat. Different times require different ways of treating people, and we learn as we go. We learn with other people. We learn with our parents, right? We learn with other parents. We learn with our friends. And then Aniceto seemed pleased to what was going on, and he said, the gospel brings balance to the soul. And that's what Dona Isabel showed us here, right? She spoke to each one of her sons, her children, her daughters in a different way, bringing balance, always loving, always caring, but showing this love and this care in different ways for different people, not being angry, not being physically aggressive, let's say, right? It's not about being aggressive. It's not about being physically abusive. No, it's about being firm. It's about saying yes when it's a yes, saying no when it's a no, and sometimes a maybe when it's a maybe, right? And then having a discussion, having a conversation so that we can meet halfway or meet in a way where it is not damaging to my side, is not damaging to our side, but more than my side or in your side, it's not being damaging to our spiritual side, to the spiritual side of what the family is, to what the family really needs. Little Nelly was frightened and asked humbly, Mama, don't let Joãozinho rent the room. The widow looks at her and says, Joãozinho won't do that. He knows his mama means what she says. Let's not talk about this anymore, Nelly. Means what she says. This is something very, very important here for us to close our chapter, because it's not a threat, because to threat is to impose fear. And fear is never a good step when we are trying to educate somebody. It's not about fear. It's about respect. It's about truth, and it's about deed. It's about truth and about action. What she's saying here is that don't do this this is very important for you to understand. I love every one of you. You are all my children, and I mean what I say. This house, this home is under my guidance, is under Jesus' guidance. Your father is around here. Isidoro is here helping me, helping us go through these problems. You will not talk about this anymore. This place here is for our home worship. It is important for us as a family, as a spiritual family, to have this. So this is what we are doing, and I mean what I say. So it's not a threat. It is truth and activity, truth and action. And then they finish their meeting when, looking at the clock, she asks Joaninha to pray, giving thanks in their name because their time is up. And as you all know, our time is already up. And the loving girl, with a noble and loving expression, thanked the Lord, touching their hearts, touching also our hearts. I am going to say that this night you guys touched my heart, touched Francisca's hearts, and I hope that you, with your prayers, you can touch everybody else's hearts, touch the hearts of your families, touch the hearts of those who surround you, the same way we are striving to do the same on our path, so that we can together make this world a better place, allowing God and allowing our dear friend Jesus to act on us, on our actions, on our thoughts, on what we do with our day-to-day lives. I hope that next week you join us again for one more chapter in the messengers in our home. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.